Joining us now in our Washington, D.C. studio is Valeriy Chaly. He is the ambassador of Ukraine to the United States. Ambassador, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Right, so we have renewed tensions in Ukraine right now. Russia has accused Ukraine of conducting armed incursions into Crimea, which is under the control of Russia. The German foreign minister has expressed his concerns over these developments. What is Ukraine's response to these concerns?
It's accusation of Russia, the same thing like claims on the non-presence of Russian troops in the Ukrainian territory. Now everybody knows that it's a very cynic and insane to say it. And by the way, Vladimir Putin the last week recognized the second time. I remember reports of you 2 years ago in Crimea, and that time they did not recognize the presence of Russian special operations forces. Now they recognize. And I can show you how many forces now in the eastern part of Ukraine. We have up to 6,000 Russian troops and up to 40,000 troops of Russian base. So that's a problem, the occupation of the part of Ukrainian territory and this situation in Crimea. Terroristic attack, if we speak about terroristic attack, I want to remind you, MH17, now investigation and continue, they will wait in the report. So that's a terroristic attack. And I can say very firm, our official position, we will never ever use a terroristic attack in our Ukrainian Crimea, because we still supply electricity, we supply fresh water to Crimea. It's our people, temporary occupied territory. So it's not a reason made it. But what's the main problem? How to stop terroristic attack in this temporary occupied territory? That's a problem on the eastern part of Ukraine, in this Russian-Ukraine conflict.
Now we have these new efforts to reach some kind of ceasefire deal, some kind of peace in the region. Russia is calling for restraint and says, look, the Minsk peace accords brokered by European nations should be at the center of any kind of peace settlement. What is Ukraine's view on this? Is the problem the fact that Ukraine and Russia may have different interpretations of the Minsk agreement?
Well, I participated in this negotiation, like Chief Foreign Policy Advisor to the President of Ukraine and member of delegation. I participated in prepared Minsk arrangements. Right. Frankly, very criticized inside my country because it was compromise. And we go on this compromise. But what's important is in compromise, not to take one position from Buffett, but like all these arrangements. What's important? Important to have security, withdraw the weapons, withdraw the heavy artillery, tanks, everything, to release hostages and closing border. And in the same time, we can begin, and we did it, Ukraine did it, political process. So after that, we can go further with political process, and finally, we will to implement these arrangements. It's the only way how we achieved it. By the way, President of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, last week in his address to the people in the parliament, mentioned this also only way how to resolve this conflict diplomatic means. But in the same time, we understand there's no trust, and we should have a strong military capabilities to stop such attempts of next aggression. You know, you see now that we have up to 100,000 Russian troops around our territory, and 40,000 inside these Russian-based terrorists. So we have a huge problem with next steps, and responsibility all partners, all the sides, very important. And that's why it's good news that next week we will have in Kyiv ministers of foreign affairs of French and German.
The Russians would say these troops are there because these exercises have been planned a long time ago.
I remember, once again, your 2 years ago report about this exercise before the fake referendum and attempt of annexation of Crimea, former occupation of Crimea. That's why now we do not trust Russia. And that's the main problem. So if we have some exercise with to increase capabilities with tanks, everything, aircrafts and everything, we should be prepared.
Right, so I'm wondering, how do you overcome these differences? Because there are very widely divergent views on what is taking place right now in the region. Let's take a listen to what the Russian President Vladimir Putin had to say. Let's watch.
This attempt to provoke an outbreak of violence, to provoke a conflict, is nothing other than a desire to divert public attention from the country by those who took power in Kiev, to continue to stay in power and to continue stealing from their own people.
What do you make of that?
I think we have, you know, frankly, I do not want to comment President of Russia, but I can once again say this was lie, about the non-presence of Russian troops in Ukrainian territory. So this now is really problematic to trust every word that even President of Russia mentioned. But without Russia, impossible to find a solution. That's why we want to have Russia on the table. And I believe Russia to find the right decision, because future and the strategy, it helps Russia a lot. So I think it's also in Russia's interest, as soon as possible, to stop this violation of human rights in Crimea, to make the right decision, strategic decision, only in that case of restore Ukrainian territorial integrity. More than 100 countries did not recognize that. So Ukraine will never give up Crimea or this case for Russia. It's impossible because our people. That's why its peace process should continue. But at the same time, we should understand that Ukraine now lose and pay a very big price for that. More than 10,000 people killed and tens of thousands wounded, up to 2.5 refugees. So that's the case, and we should stop it, and Russia should take own responsibility to implement Minsk arrangements.
There is a lull in the fighting right now. It's being described as the back-to-school ceasefire. What can you tell us about the security situation in that area known as the Donbass area?
From one hand, it's Beijing summit to G20 was very important because it was meeting, and I want to mention and underline that in that meeting, Chancellor Merkel, President Hollande, and President of the United States, Barack Obama, they agreed among them not meet without Ukrainian side on that meeting, and after that, next decision for normative format. What we have now.
Were the Russians present at that meeting?
Yes, also they have bilateral meetings with Russian president, but not together. And what we have now, we agreed, and we are Ukrainians ready from 1st of September. It's a very good day for children, for peace. We won't have a peace like a leader of China mentioned about economy, about sustainable development. We won't have peninsula like a peace peninsula, Crimea, for the future. Unfortunately, we not have the same position from our side, from Russia. But from 1st of September, we believe that we have this ceasefire. Unfortunately, yesterday, one soldier Ukrainian died and 2 wounded, and opened the shelling from the heavy artillery of 122 millimeters is prohibited by Minsk arrangements. That's why it's a very fragile situation. But I believe we will maintain this ceasefire.
Right. If we look at the positions of the two sides, Russia says that it is reviewing what it calls counterterrorism security measures on the Crimea border. It's carrying out these military drills, as I mentioned earlier on. On the Ukrainian side, President Petro Poroshenko says that he's ordered all Ukrainian units near Crimea, in eastern Ukraine as well, to be at the highest state of combat readiness. That's ratcheting it up, isn't it?
Well, we keep this readiness every time for this war for 2 years. But in this, when you open exercise and preparation for the possible attack, you should be prepared and respond for that. But in the same time, once again, we will not use any activity in the Crimea, Ukrainian territory, but we understand how it's sensitive now, so we want to finalize with Donbass, but we will not forget about Crimea. So for Crimea, it's only peace process possible, and I believe in that case we'll find the solution. But if anybody to make an accusation on Ukraine, they should think about own steps. Firstly, because it should be from the road from both sides, by 2 ways, not only 1 way. And what's important, without international support, without international community, we will not resolve this conflict, because it's not Russian-Ukrainian conflict. It's a conflict of Russia with all the world that they want to restore international order. And by the way, I would appreciate for all the countries who did not recognize Crimea occupation.
Ambassador, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.